I've been a motion designer for over a decade, and ever since the beginning, I've looked for ways to become more efficient with After Effects, and the solution has almost always been scripts or plugins within After Effects. So today, I'm gonna give you my top 15 plugins, 8 of which I use every single time I open After Effects, and the rest at least once a week. And don't worry, most of these are free or name your own price if you feel so inclined to give back to the creators. Only 2 plugins are actually paid. So let's jump into After Effects and get started. You know that moment when your project panel looks like a toddler's toy box? Well, folder structure is the adult supervision you need. This plugin doesn't just save time, it saves future you from a headache. And it does exactly what it says on the box. It creates a folder structure for you to organize your projects. From the get-go, you have 4 default structures that you can select from, or you can create your own. Now personally, I use the Essential preset and add any additional folders if there's a need for it. This might not seem like a big deal, but being organized is the first step in becoming more efficient, and it's especially useful if you work in teams and you need to hand off your project to somebody else. The next plugin is FX Console. Now this is the one everybody uses, or at least they should use. It's used to apply effects to your layers. Now normally, you'd go digging through the effects and presets panel like a pirate searching for treasure. But with FX Console, it's like having a magic spell that summons any effect instantly. You just hit the shortcut, by default Control Space, type the effect's name, hit enter, and boom, there you go. But it doesn't do just that, it also lets you take quick snapshots for reference, so no more of a what did it look like before, you know? Now we have motion tools. Think of it like a Swiss Army knife. You have a whole bunch of plugins all rolled into one. Now, I'm not gonna go into each and every one, but my most used ones are the Anchor Point Mover, the Easing plugin, so say goodbye to the graph editor, the Staggering plugin, which allows you to stagger either layers or keyframes in a certain order or randomly, the Explode or Merge shape layers, so if you have multiple shapes within a layer, you can transfer each shape into its own layer, or go from multiple layers to one shape layer containing multiple shapes. I know that sounded confusing, but believe me, it's not, and it's powerful. So these would be my most used plugins within motion tools, but you still have other useful ones like the keyframe cloner, unprecomp layers, collecting colors, exporting GIFs, looping expressions, a lot of them. So, get motion tools and try each one for yourself. Next, Void, the brainchild of Battleaxe and Jake Bartlett. Void is pretty much a replacement tool for nulls, adjustment layers, and solids. But why would you need to do that? Well, for organization purposes for one. Each time you create a standard null, a new solids folder and a new solid is created. Now, this isn't a big deal if you have just 1 or 2, but once you start working on a complex project, the nulls start adding up and it bogs down your system. Using Void though, you don't need to worry. Void uses shape layers instead of solids and comes with all the benefits of shape layers. Now, I'm not gonna go too in-depth because Jake already has on his channel, so I encourage you to go check his video out. Want cool text animations but hate setting up keyframes for every parameter? Text Evo 2 makes that possible. You get the exact same settings as you would using text animators, but easily accessible and with fewer keyframes. And you can also easily copy and paste the animation you just set up to other text layers, set up presets, and do a whole bunch of other stuff as well. Ever made the perfect easing for an animation only to struggle replicating it? Ease Copy lets you copy-paste easing between keyframes, so all of your animations match without guesswork. Now, a version of this is already found within motion tools, but I've been using Ease Copy for so long that it's been ingrained into my workflow. Plus, to be honest, I found that it's a bit more reliable than what I found in motion tools. Now, the one with the funny name, Butt Capper. This almost became obsolete with the introduction of the Properties panel in After Effects, but After Effects still can do everything that Butt Capper does, especially when dealing with multiple shape layers or multiple shapes within a layer. Now with Butt Capper, you can just select the layers you want changed and click, you're done. Now all shapes have round caps. And an extra cool feature is the Maintain Stroke with Expression. Once you apply that, no matter how you scale your layer, the stroke width remains the same. Now for our first paid plugin, Overlord. Dragging assets from Illustrator to After Effects should be easy, but it's not. Overlord makes it seamless. All you have to do is select what you want, click the button, And here you go, they appear in After Effects ready to animate. Now obviously it does more than that, but this is its primary function and this is what I mainly use it for. Ever needed to animate individual letters or words separately after you've already spent the time adding keyframes and animating your line of text? Decompose Text automatically splits your text into layers so you don't have to do it manually, while keeping all the work that you've already done, which obviously is a huge time saver. And speaking of text, do you need to match a text style? Style Bandit lets you copy styles between text layers. Very much a time saver if you have to do that in different comps. Now this one is a godsend. How many times have you had to increase the duration of your comp only to have to go and do the same for each pre-comp found within it? And I know for me that answer is way too many times. So Match Comp Duration does that instantly. One click and done. I honestly cannot overstate how useful that is. Next up, Super Resize Me, which lets you resize your comps and everything found within them. If you need to resize your comp, doing it manually doesn't also resize its content. You would have to do that manually as well, but with this plugin, everything is taken care of for you. If you need to deliver a project in 4K, for example, but your system struggles with that resolution, you can just work in 1080 and at the end just resize your comp to 4K and export that. Duplicating a composition in After Effects is a nightmare if you have other comps within it that need to be modified as well. TrueComp Duplicator makes perfect copies without messing up your original layers. Even if you have a bunch of comps or pre-comps, those will be duplicated as well, so you can start messing around with their contents without having a ripple effect on your previous work. Now, just like Motion Tools, Anti-Static Toolbox is a collection of small useful scripts that solve annoying After Effects problems. But unlike Motion Tools, this one's a bit more niche. Again, I'm not gonna go through all of the tools within it, but my most used ones are Duplicate Layers, Loop Composition, Stagger, Radial, and Grid Positions, the Randomizer, and the Effector. Now, I encourage you to visit their YouTube channel for an in-depth presentation of what all of these plugins do. And lastly, the second paid plugin, Universal Audio. If you've ever had to work with voiceover on an explainer video, for example, you know the pain of timing your animations to the audio, especially if you want to work with compositions based on the different scenes that you have. There is no way of hearing the audio from your main comp into those subcomps. And Universal Audio does just that. It propagates your audio into all of the compositions so that you can work more organized and obviously more efficiently. So if you want to save hours working on your projects and make everything buttery smooth, try out these plugins. Your future self will thank you. And if you want to know what other plugins I use, just let me know in the comments and I'll make a second part of this video.